Thomas Chen's breath fogged in the sudden cold of the maintenance shaft as he descended below level 7, far deeper than any routine repair job required. The pulsing blue light had first appeared on his diagnostics panel 3 days ago, a power fluctuation in systems that officially didn't exist. Chen to control. "I'm tracking that anomaly in Section 42B, he reported, following protocol despite knowing nobody monitored this channel during third shift. The dying colony of New Eden operated on strict efficiency, with humanity reduced to this single outpost of 50,000 souls. Every resource was precious, every system vital. At least, that's what Administrator Shaw reminded them during her monthly addresses. The temperature dropped another 5 degrees as Thomas bypassed the security lock using maintenance override codes. He'd never seen this door before. A hexagonal portal embedded in what should have been solid foundation rock. Beyond it stretched a corridor of unmistakably alien design, its walls covered in flowing script that seemed to shift when he looked away. "This is impossible," he whispered, comparing the architecture to his colony schematics. Nothing below level 5 appeared on official maps. The corridor opened into a vast chamber dominated by a crystalline structure that pulsed with the same blue light he'd been tracking. The walls were covered in hexagonal patterns that reminded him of honeycomb, each cell containing different symbols. Some appeared to be mathematical equations, others resembled star charts of unfamiliar constellations. Thomas activated his wrist scanner, but it immediately malfunctioned, the screen displaying only the same hexagonal pattern before going dark. The sound of approaching footsteps sent him diving behind a crystalline column. The Council of Elders filed into the chamber, led by Administrator Elara Shaw herself. In 15 years of colony service, Thomas had only seen the council at public ceremonies, distant figures on view screens. Now, barely 10 meters away, they formed a circle around the pulsing crystal. "The integration rate exceeds projections," announced Elder Vero, his voice carrying a strange harmonic quality. "Neural adaptations are proceeding in 82% of the population." As one, the 7 elders rolled up their sleeves, revealing identical tattoos on their wrists, symbols matching those on the chamber walls. The tattoos pulsed in synchronization with the crystal. "And what of resistance factors?" Shaw asked, her typically commanding voice subdued. "Minimal. The children with the genetic variants have been identified for special observation." Shaw placed her hand directly on the crystal. "The Ascended are pleased with our progress. 3 generations of careful cultivation, and soon the vessels will be ready." Commander Voss, head of colony security, entered through a different doorway. "Administrator, we've detected an unauthorized access in this sector." Thomas pressed himself harder against the column, heart hammering. Security protocols for restricted areas were simple: immediate detention, no questions. "Find the intruder," Shaw ordered. "If they've seen this chamber." She paused, her voice dropping. "Bring them to me directly." As the security team spread out, Elder Yuan turned suddenly toward Thomas's hiding place. For a moment, her eyes shifted, pupils contracting and expanding into perfect hexagons before returning to normal. "The vessel integrity remains at 98%, she announced, her voice layered with that same alien resonance. "The Ascended will soon return home." Thomas remained frozen until they departed, then fled back through the corridor, sealing the door behind him. As he climbed toward familiar territory, his scanner suddenly reactivated, displaying a message in colony standard. "Integration rate, 99.8%. Anomaly detected in subject TC 47,821. Chen, Thomas. Genetic variance, 0.003%. Observation status, immediate." He stared at his own designation code with growing horror. Somewhere in the colony, alarms would be sounding in security headquarters with his name attached. Whatever secret New Eden was hiding went beyond alien artifacts. His own people were involved, transformed somehow. And now they knew he was different. He had until morning shift change to disappear. The Founding Day celebration filled New Eden's central plaza with light and sound, a rare moment of collective joy in the colony's otherwise strictly regulated existence. Children wore replica environmental suits honoring the first settlers, while adults sipped rationed synthetic wine beneath banners depicting Earth's final days. Maya Lakshmi watched from the medical station, more focused on her diagnostic pad than the festivities. Something in the colony's health metrics had been bothering her for weeks. Subtle patterns of neurological changes showing up in routine scans, all officially dismissed as environmental adaptation. Enjoying the celebration, Dr. Administrator Shaw materialized beside her, causing Maya to quickly switch screens. Just ensuring we're prepared for the inevitable injuries, Maya replied, noticing how Shaw's typically perfect composure seemed strained, dark circles visible beneath expertly applied cosmetics. Always vigilant, Shaw nodded. Your mother would be proud. The mention of her mother, one of the colony's founding physicians, felt like salt in a wound. 10 years since her mysterious accident in a quarantined research lab, and still no access to the official reports. Shaw's communicator chimed with an urgent tone. Her face hardened as she listened to the message. Without explanation, she turned and strode purposefully toward the council building, flanked by security officers who materialized from the crowd. The celebration continued for exactly 6 more minutes. The atmospheric breach alarm split the air as a burning object tore through the sky, trailing debris and fire. Colony defense systems, supposedly automated, remained ominously silent as the object punched through the agricultural dome's transparent ceiling, scattering celebrants in panicked waves. Maya was moving before the impact, medical kit already in hand as she sprinted toward the crash site. The agricultural sector's environmental systems were cycling emergency protocols, sealing off sections as autonomous drones fought to contain fires among the hydroponics towers. Get those people back, she shouted as civilians clustered near the twisted wreckage. The craft was unlike any colony vessel, its silver hull rippling like disturbed water even as it burned. Security forces arrived moments later, Commander Voss barking orders. Quarantine protocols. Everyone clear the area. This is a Class 1 contamination event. Maya held her ground. There could be survivors. We need tow. The craft's hull suddenly split open, releasing a hiss of unfamiliar atmosphere. Colony security raised pulse rifles as a figure emerged from the wreckage. Tall, 6-limbed, with skin like polished mercury that reflected the agricultural dome's emergency lights in prismatic patterns. The alien's voice resonated at a frequency that bypassed ears entirely, translating directly into comprehensible thought. Sanctuary. Diplomatic vessel. Unprovoked attack. Voss fired without warning. The energy pulse struck the alien but dissipated across its liquid metal skin. With a gesture, the creature disabled the security team's weapons, components falling away as if disassembled by invisible hands. Stand down. Maya stepped between them. Medical protocols supersede security in first contact scenarios. There are no first contact protocols, Voss snarled. Humanity stands alone. The alien's silver skin rippled with what might have been pain as it collapsed. Maya reached it first, her medical scanner revealing a physiology utterly foreign yet organized around recognizable principles. I need to stabilize him, she announced, making a decision that would unravel everything she knew about New Eden. Help me get him to my lab. That's not authorized, Voss objected, but already civilians were helping, improvising a stretcher from debris. Then arrest me, Maya challenged, after I saved the first visitor from beyond our colony in 3 generations. As they transported the alien, its skin briefly solidified enough to grasp Maya's wrist. Images flooded her mind. Vast spaceports teeming with humans alongside dozens of other species, thriving worlds where Earth's survivors had built new homes. Not extinction, but diaspora. Impossible, she whispered. The alien's thoughts formed words in her consciousness. Your colony doesn't appear in any Concord registry. Officially, you don't exist. But something has been drawing ships to this sector for decades. Ships that never return. Thomas awoke to the hiss of his apartment's ventilation system switching to emergency protocols. The bitter almond scent of neurotoxin filled his nostrils as the environmental display flashed red. System malfunction. EVAQUAMMEDATLI. He rolled from his bed, hitting the floor as the first wave of dizziness struck. The manual override panel across the room seemed impossibly distant as his vision blurred. 3 stumbling steps, and his legs gave out. A message flashed across his personal comm. No TNACCIDNT. West Service Tunnel. 10 minutes. The message came from Maya Lakshmi, a woman he'd met exactly once during last year's mandatory physical. As darkness edged his vision, Thomas dragged himself toward the maintenance shaft in his utility closet, designed for repair access, but large enough for a desperate man to squeeze through. 20 minutes later, still struggling to breathe normally, he faced Maya in an abandoned water recycling station beneath the residential sector. "That was colony security tech," he gasped. "How did you know?" "Because the same malfunction killed my mother 10 years ago," Maya replied, scanning him with a medical device. "Neurotoxin levels decreasing. You'll live, unfortunately for both of us." She gestured to her companion, an elderly man with wispy white hair and trembling hands. "This is Dr. Kaito Wada. He's been expecting someone like you to show up for a very long time." "Someone like me?" "Someone whose genetic profile triggered the colony's automated defense systems," Dr. Wada answered, voice barely above a whisper. "Someone with anomalous markers. Like her mother. Like my daughter." Dr. Wada's makeshift laboratory occupied what had once been a water quality monitoring station, now filled with salvaged medical equipment and ancient data terminals disconnected from the colony network. Projected on the wall was a 3-dimensional model of a DNA strand with an additional structure Thomas didn't recognize. 3 days ago, you accessed a restricted area, Maya said. Yesterday, I treated a visitor who shouldn't exist according to everything we've been taught. Now colony security wants both of us eliminated. Coincidence? Dr. Wada manipulated the DNA projection. This is standard human DNA from the colony archives. The original settlers. The image shifted. "And this is yours, Mr. Chen. Notice anything unusual?" Thomas studied the complex spiral. "I'm not a geneticist." "The synthetic chromosome." Dr. Wada highlighted a segment. "It's not present in the founding generation's genetic records, but it appears in every colonist born on New Eden. Every colonist except a statistically impossible handful, like you, with your 0.003% genetic variance." "What does it do?" Thomas asked. "It creates receptors," Maya answered, displaying brain tissue samples on a second screen. "Neural pathways that shouldn't exist in human physiology." A distant rumble interrupted them, the sublevel vibrating as emergency sirens activated throughout the colony. On Maya's comm, a public alert displayed. "Mandatory VIUDI. Emergency KO sales SESSION." The projected feed showed the council chamber, where Administrator Shaw addressed the colony. "Citizens of New Eden, concerning the unauthorized vessel that breached our security yesterday." Elder Novik, seated behind her, suddenly convulsed, his body arching unnaturally. The camera focused on him as his skin grew translucent, revealing pulsing blue filaments throughout his body. His eyes transformed to hexagonal pupils as an inhuman sound emerged from his throat, a harmonic sequence that made the laboratory equipment vibrate at the same frequency. Dr. Wada's hands trembled more violently as he translated ancient symbols appearing on a separate monitor. The signal strengthens. The network expands. The awakening approaches. The broadcast cut to emergency protocols as Maya's personal comm chimed with an encrypted message from an unknown source. "They're using your people as incubators. The parasites I've detected in your population match an ancient species believed extinct. World devourers that consume civilizations from within." "It's the visitor," Maya whispered. "He's still alive." Dr. Wada collapsed into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 80-plus years. Then we're already too late. We need access to the original mission logs, Dr. Wada insisted, his frail hands surprisingly steady as he bypassed yet another security protocol. The medical center's records vault had been locked down for years, accessible only to council members. Thomas kept watch while Maya assisted the elderly scientist. Colony security patrols had increased threefold since Elder Novik's public transformation, and citizens with unexplained neural anomalies were being detained for precautionary quarantine. Got it, Dr. Wada whispered as the vault's massive door slid open with barely a sound. We have 17 minutes before the bypass triggers an alert. Inside, instead of the expected data servers, they found hundreds of physical storage devices, ancient technology preserved from the original mission ships. They kept the most sensitive data isolated from the network, Maya realized, scanning the carefully categorized containers. Even the council would need physical access. Dr. Wada moved directly to a section marked Helios Project, Sci-Fi HFY. The storage device, he selected required manual activation, a fail-safe against remote access. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a woman in a commander's uniform, her face hauntingly similar to Administrator Shaw's. Mission Log 173, Admiral Helena Shaw commanding. We've recovered the crystalline structure from Excavation Site 7. Initial analysis confirms it's not geological in origin. The logs chronicled the discovery, a meteorite buried deep beneath the planet's surface, containing microscopic organisms in suspended animation. Early tests showed the organisms could repair damaged DNA, accelerate healing, even extend cellular lifespans. The potential is beyond anything we imagined. Admiral Shaw's image continued in a later entry, her eyes feverishly bright. These organisms create a symbiotic relationship with human cells, enhancing our natural capabilities. The perfect adaptation for colonists facing unknown planetary challenges. The following logs showed the mission leaders voluntarily infecting themselves, documenting the enhancements with clinical precision. Increased strength, accelerated cognitive function, rapid healing. Their excitement was palpable until log 247. Something's changing, Admiral Shaw reported, dark circles beneath her eyes, her typically immaculate appearance disheveled. The dreams started 3 weeks ago. Now we're all having them. The same dreams. Vast cities of crystal. Stars seen from impossible vantage points. Voices speaking in harmonics human vocal cords cannot produce. Maya fast-forwarded through multiple entries, stopping at log 301, where Admiral Shaw's appearance had subtly altered, her skin slightly translucent, eyes occasionally shifting to that now familiar hexagonal pattern. They showed us such wonders to blind us to the truth. We are not becoming evolved. We are becoming vessels, she whispered, voice breaking. We've established the isolation protocols. No ships leave. No transmissions sent. Whatever we're becoming must be contained here. The final log showed Admiral Shaw alone in her quarters, the transformation more advanced. If you're watching this, they haven't taken full control yet. The organisms aren't parasites. They're fragments of a consciousness. They remake us cell by cell, building a neural network using human brains as hardware. She leaned closer to the camera, her pupils fully hexagonal now. The original colonists are lost. Protect the children. Some show natural resistance. And if containment fails, she shuddered, fighting for control, then New Eden must be destroyed, for the sake of all humanity. The recording ended as a hidden security alarm blared. Maya grabbed the storage device as Thomas sealed the vault. We have company, he warned, checking the security feed. Commander Voss led a full tactical team through the medical center's main entrance. Dr. Wada pointed to a maintenance tunnel. This leads to the agricultural sector. She mentioned children with resistance. We need to find them. First, we need to find Vex, Maya interrupted. If these organisms are alien, he might know how to stop them. The security team's footsteps echoed down the corridor as they slipped into the darkness of the maintenance tunnel, the horrifying truth now clear. New Eden wasn't humanity's last hope. It was becoming humanity's extinction. The colony-wide announcement came at precisely 600. Citizens of New Eden. This is Administrator Shaw. A Concorde vessel has been detected in orbit. For your protection, emergency protocols are now in effect. Remain in your habitation units for mandatory medical screening. Maya watched the broadcast from Hydroponic Section 12, where they'd established temporary sanctuary in an abandoned nutrient processing chamber. The administrator's voice sounded normal, but her eyes flickered between human and hexagonal pupils as she spoke. Protocol Ascension is exactly what Admiral Shaw warned about, Dr. Wada muttered, analyzing water samples from different colony sectors. Look at these readings. The samples revealed microscopic crystalline structures suspended in the colony's water supply, structures identical to those in the tissue samples they'd analyzed from affected colonists. They're accelerating the transformation, Thomas said. But why now? The Concorde ship, Maya concluded. Whatever's controlling the colony sees it as a threat or an opportunity. Through improvised surveillance taps into the colony network, they watched as citizens reported for medical screening, only to return with subtle changes, slightly altered gaits, unnaturally coordinated movements, voices that occasionally harmonized when speaking in groups. The water supply is just the beginning, Dr. Wada explained. Those already hosting the parasite are generating a resonance field that accelerates activation in others. A priority alert on Maya's stolen security transponder interrupted them. Unknown transmission source. Encryption level beyond colony protocols. The message was simple. Central hub. Sub-level 3. Access shaft R17. 1 hour. Come alone. Ease. It's a trap, Thomas insisted. Why would Administrator Shaw help us? Because she's not fully transformed, Maya replied. Did you see her eyes fighting the change during the broadcast? If Admiral Shaw could leave those warnings decades after infection. It doesn't matter, Dr. Wada interjected, gesturing to his monitor. Look at these infection vectors. Within 48 hours, the entire colony will be transformed. Maya made her decision. I'm going. You two focus on synthesizing some kind of treatment based on our natural resistance. Access shaft R17 led deeper than any authorized colony level. Maya descended past machinery older than the colony itself, technology unlike anything in New Eden's official inventory. The shaft ended at a laboratory where Administrator Elara Shaw waited alone, her appearance shockingly transformed. Crystalline blue filaments visibly pulsed beneath her translucent skin. Her movements seemed choreographed by something inhuman, yet her eyes, still fighting between human and hexagonal, conveyed desperate determination. You came. Shaw's voice fluctuated between her natural tone and an underlying harmonic. I don't have much time before they notice my absence. They? Maya kept her distance. You mean the Council. The Council is gone. Their bodies remain, but their consciousness has been subsumed. Shaw's face contorted with effort. I've been fighting it longer than most. My mother's genetic modifications gave me resistance, but it's failing. She gestured to equipment around them. This was my mother's private laboratory. For decades, I've continued her work, searching for a way to reverse what we've become. Shaw activated a sealed container, revealing vials of amber liquid. This formula temporarily suppresses the organism's neural integration. Not a cure, but it might buy time. Why help us? Maya demanded. What changed? The signal. Shaw's body spasmed, hexagonal patterns briefly covering her skin before receding. The beacon they're building isn't just to call others. It's to transmit our neural patterns across space. Every infected human becomes a template to convert countless other species. Security alarms blared throughout the complex. Shaw thrust the container at Maya. Take it. Find the children with natural immunity. Their neurological configuration is the key. The laboratory door exploded inward as transformed security forces breached the perimeter. "Go," Shaw commanded, her body fully transitioning as she placed herself between Maya and the intruders. The maintenance tunnels, Section 42C, connects to the agricultural ring. As Maya escaped through a hidden passage, she heard Shaw's final words, her human voice breaking through one last time. "My mother created this nightmare, and I've spent my life preparing for when the Ascended decided we were ready for harvest. Don't let us become the destroyers of worlds." "Their neural pathways aren't developed enough," Dr. Wada explained, examining brain scans from the 12 children they gathered in the abandoned agricultural processing facility. "The parasitic organism requires specific neural networks to establish control, networks that don't fully form until adolescence." Maya administered Shaw's suppression formula to Thomas, who had begun experiencing headaches and geometric visual distortions, early signs of the parasite activating in his system despite his partial resistance. "How many doses can you synthesize?" Thomas asked, feeling clarity return as the formula took effect. "Not enough," Dr. Wada admitted, "but the children's blood samples contain antibodies we might be able to replicate. Their immune systems naturally attack the organism before neural bonding occurs." A soft chime from their jury-rigged communication system interrupted them. Vex had finally responded to their signals. The alien diplomat had established a hidden base in the agricultural sector's outer ring, an area damaged during his ship's crash and deemed structurally unsound by colony authorities. Perfect cover, as the transformed security forces avoided areas with environmental instability. "The parasites disrupted my stasis recovery," Vex explained, his liquid metal skin rippling with iridescent patterns that conveyed emotion alongside his telepathic communication. "They recognized my species." "You've encountered them before?" Maya asked. "Not I, but my ancestors." Vex manipulated a device that projected stellar cartography across the wall. "Millions of years ago, they dominated this galactic sector. The Ascended, as they called themselves, consumed entire civilizations, not through conquest, but conversion. They seeded worlds with dormant spores, waiting for sentient life to evolve sufficient neural complexity." Thomas studied the projection. What stopped them? A coalition of ancient species deployed weapons that shattered their consciousness into fragments, each too small to maintain awareness. The fragments were believed destroyed. Vex's skin darkened to deep indigo. "Your colony has been cultivating them back to collective sentience." A child named Elise, barely 10 years old, approached without fear. "The Crystal People are building something big. I saw it in my dreams." The other children nodded in unison. "They don't control us," another child explained, "but we can feel them, like music playing far away." Dr. Wada's instruments suddenly detected a massive energy surge from the colony's central hub. On their emergency broadcast receiver, thousands of overlapping voices spoke as one. "The vessels are prepared. The beacon rises. The Ascended return to claim their dominion." Vex's communication device emitted an urgent signal. "My ship's sensors detect the Concord vessel powering weapons systems. They've identified the threat signature. They're going to destroy the colony," Maya realized. "Standard quarantine protocol for Class Omega biological threats," Vex confirmed. "The Concord cannot risk the parasites spreading." A deafening alarm blared throughout the colony, one never before activated. On every display, emergency evacuation procedures flashed, directing citizens to non-existent shelters. "They're herding people toward the central hub," Thomas observed, gathering their neural network in one location. Dr. Wada activated a colony schematic. "The beacon will transmit using the power core as an amplifier. If we can disrupt that connection." "We need more of the suppression formula," Maya interrupted. "Enough to distribute through the central hub's ventilation system. It won't cure anyone, but it might create enough neural disruption to delay the transmission." Vex extended a limb, metallic skin forming into complex instrumental shapes. I can synthesize an amplifier for the formula using components from my ship, but someone must reach the environmental control center to distribute it, and someone needs to sabotage the power core connection," Thomas added. One of the older children, a 13-year-old boy named Marcus, stepped forward. "The dreams show me where they're building the beacon. I can guide you." Maya looked at their small resistance group, a dozen children, an alien diplomat, an elderly scientist, and 2 adults with partial immunity. Against them, thousands of transformed colonists with a single collective purpose. "We have 18 hours before the Concord deploys kinetic strikes," Vex warned. "After that, nothing of New Eden will remain." Maya and Thomas moved through the central hub's maintenance corridors, their faces altered by Vex's adaptive camouflage technology, a thin layer of programmable material that mimicked the translucent skin and subtle blue filaments of partially transformed colonists. "The resonance field is stronger here," Thomas whispered, fighting a wave of disorientation, despite Shaw's formula flowing through his bloodstream. "I can feel them. Searching." The central hub had transformed beyond recognition. Walls pulsed with crystalline growths, floors realigned into geometric patterns that guided movement toward the colony center. Most disturbing were the colonists themselves, hundreds moving in perfect synchronization, their individual identities subsumed into the collective consciousness growing stronger by the hour. Following Marcus's telepathically shared map, they reached a junction where the corridor opened to a vast chamber that had once been the colony's main assembly hall. Maya stifled a gasp at the horror before them. The most advanced transformations had resulted in complete integration with the colony's architecture. Dozens of colonists stood embedded in walls, their bodies fused with machinery and crystalline structures, organic components of the growing beacon. Their eyes, uniformly hexagonal now, stared unseeing as their neural networks processed vast amounts of data. "Those are people we know," Maya whispered. "Neighbors, colleagues." Thomas checked their portable scanner. "The power conduits run beneath this chamber. We need to reach the lower level." They descended through narrowing passages, the walls increasingly organic, pulsing with what could only be described as a heartbeat. The central power core, originally New Eden's primary fusion reactor, now resembled a cathedral of technology and transformed human tissue. This wasn't in Marcus's vision, Thomas noted as they navigated the grotesque landscape. A familiar voice resonated from behind them. "Because this level is shielded from neural scanning." They turned to find Administrator Shaw, her transformation advanced yet somehow arrested. Half her body crystalline, the other half still fighting to remain human. "You should be dead," Maya said, reaching for the pulse disruptor Vex had provided. "What you saw was a projection," Shaw explained, her voice fluctuating between human speech and harmonic resonances. "I needed the collective to believe I was fully integrated while I completed my preparations." "Preparations for what?" Thomas demanded, keeping distance between them. "For this." Shaw gestured to the transformed central chamber. "They aren't parasites. They're fragments of a shattered consciousness, a species that once spanned galaxies before being destroyed in an ancient war. They seeded thousands of worlds with dormant spores, waiting for suitable neural networks to rebuild their collective mind." Shaw approached the central column, placing her transformed hand against a pulsing crystalline structure. "The beacon will broadcast a neural template across the galaxy, awakening dormant spores on countless worlds and creating instant hive networks wherever it reaches." "Why tell us this?" Maya asked, finger hovering over the disruptor's trigger. "Because part of me is still human enough to realize what we're becoming." Shaw's eyes cleared momentarily, fully human as she fought for control. "Humans were perfect. Our capacity for individual thought and creativity makes us ideal hosts for rebuilding their fractured consciousness." A tremor ran through the structure as Shaw's eyes reverted to hexagonal patterns. "They're coming. The primary consciousness exists within this core, the first fragment to awaken, now directing all others." A doorway opened behind them as transformed elders entered the chamber, moving with inhuman grace. "Go," Shaw commanded, her voice briefly human again. The children are the key, not just their immunity, but what it represents: human neural development that resists uniformity. As the elders approached, Thomas activated his hidden immunity treatment injector, the concentrated formula giving him seconds to grab Maya and pull her toward a maintenance shaft Shaw had revealed. "The power core," Shaw called after them, the words barely recognizable as blue filaments spread across her face. "It's their anchor point. Destroy it," and the neural network collapses. The shaft sealed behind them as they heard Shaw's final human scream giving way to the harmonic resonance of the collective. 14 minutes to orbital strike positioning, Vex announced, his liquid metal skin pulsating with urgent patterns as he finalized preparations on the last evacuation shuttle. The agricultural sector's landing pad, damaged but functional, offered their only escape route. Dr. Wada supervised his children, and the few resistant adults boarded the shuttle, each injected with the enhanced immunity formula derived from the children's blood. The elderly scientist's hands trembled not from age, but from the effects of the formula, his partially transformed cells fighting against the treatment. "I won't survive the journey," he told Maya when she returned with Thomas through the maintenance tunnels. "The formula is killing me as surely as the transformation would." Maya accepted this truth with grim understanding. Of the original 26 adults they'd managed to treat, 11 had died when their partially integrated nervous systems rejected the treatment. The children, with their natural immunity, had become their only real hope. "The power core is their anchor point," Thomas explained, uploading the schematics he'd memorized to Vex's alien technology. "If we can trigger an overload, the resulting energy pulse should neutralize the parasitic network." "But the colony's infrastructure," Maya began. "Will be destroyed," Thomas finished, "along with anyone still integrated with the network." The weight of this settled over them. Nearly 40,000 colonists, friends, colleagues, neighbors, transformed beyond recognition, but still fundamentally human. "We're receiving a transmission from the Concorde vessel," Vex announced. "Their sensors detect our preparations. They're offering safe passage for survivors, but won't delay the strike." A sudden explosion rocked the outer perimeter as transformed security forces breached their defenses. Children screamed as crystalline shards burst through the walls, forming into humanoid shapes, the most advanced stage of transformation they'd yet witnessed. "Get them to the shuttle," Maya ordered, activating a portable shield generator. "I'm staying," Dr. Wada announced, his decision already made. "Someone needs to distribute the airborne formula through the environmental systems to give you time to reach the core. My body is already failing. Let me make this count." Maya embraced him briefly before he headed toward the Environmental Control Center, carrying the dispersal package Vex had engineered. "I'm going with you to the core," the alien diplomat announced to Thomas and Maya, his form reconfiguring for combat. "My species has unfinished business with the Ascended." As they fought their way back toward the central hub, the colony-wide communication system activated, thousands of voices speaking as one. "Humanity's purpose is fulfilled. The vessels have served. The Ascended awaken." The power core chamber had transformed further in their absence, now a pulsating cathedral of alien technology and human components. At its center stood what remained of Administrator Shaw, her body nearly unrecognizable, a living conduit between the parasitic consciousness and the beacon. "The targeting sequence is locked," Thomas reported, working at a control interface while Maya and Vexus held off waves of transformed colonists. "But I can't initiate the overload remotely. The fail-safes require direct neural authorization, which only a council member can provide," Maya realized. A tremor ran through the chamber as something awakened within the core, a massive crystalline structure pulsing with blinding light. The transformed Shaw turned toward them, eyes now entirely alien, yet somehow a flicker of recognition remained. "My mother's shame ends with me," Shaw whispered in her human voice. One final moment of clarity as she lunged toward the control interface, placing her transformed hand on the authorization panel. Warning klaxons blared as the power core initiated catastrophic overload. Vex's protective field enveloped them as they raced toward the maintenance tunnels, the countdown echoing through the disintegrating chamber. From the last shuttle rising toward the Concorde vessel, the survivors watched a brilliant pulse of energy spread across New Eden. Transformed colonists collapsed as the parasitic network shattered, the beacon crumbling into crystalline dust. The Concorde vessels held their fire as their sensors confirmed the threat's neutralization. On the shuttle, Marcus stood silently beside Maya, his young hand gripping hers tightly. "I can still hear them," he whispered. Not controlling, just remembering. They were beautiful once, before fear made them monsters. Maya looked at the children gathered around the viewport. 27 survivors carrying humanity's future and the memory of its closest brush with extinction. "What do we tell people?" Thomas asked, joining them. "About what happened here?" "The truth," Maya answered, watching New Eden recede beneath them. "That humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our stubborn refusal to surrender our individuality, even when the enemy is within."